The coffee shop was quiet that morning, the kind of place where people came to escape the noise of their busy lives. The hum of the espresso machine filled the air, blending with the soft chatter of a few regulars who sat hunched over their laptops or books. At a corner table near the window sat a woman in her early 40s, the CEO of a growing tech company. She had spent the last several years building her career from the ground up. Her name, though irrelevant to the story, was known in business circles. People admired her for her drive and determination, but few truly understood the person she was beyond the success she had achieved. Her morning was no different than any other. She was working on her latest project, sifting through emails and reports when her gaze inadvertently drifted from the screen. Her eyes landed on a young girl sitting alone at a nearby table. The girl, perhaps no older than 12, was in stark contrast to the corporate atmosphere of the cafe. She wore a simple dress, faded in color but comfortable, and her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail. What caught the CEO's attention wasn't so much the girl's appearance. It was the necklace she wore. It was an old necklace, delicate and elegant, though it looked well worn. The pendant was small, almost too small to notice, but something about the way it gleamed in the soft morning light made the CEO pause. The girl seemed lost in thought, absent-mindedly tracing the pendant with her finger. For a moment, the CEO wondered what could bring such a young girl to a place like this. She had never seen her before, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes that reminded the CEO of someone she couldn't quite place. She couldn't focus on her work anymore. The curiosity about the girl's story gnawed at her. What had happened in her life to make her sit in such quiet contemplation? The CEO didn't usually pay attention to others in public spaces. She was too focused on her own world, always moving at a fast pace, always thinking ahead. But something about the girl's stillness made her want to slow down for a moment. She set her laptop aside and looked over at the girl, who still hadn't noticed her gaze. As if on instinct, the CEO stood up from her chair and walked toward the girl's table. She had no clear reason for the action, only that she felt a strange pull to this child who seemed so out of place in the cafe. "Hi," the CEO said, her voice gentle but carrying the kind of warmth that had taken years to develop. The girl looked up in surprise, her eyes wide and slightly defensive, as if she was not used to being noticed. "Hi," the girl replied softly, her voice small. "I couldn't help but notice your necklace," the CEO continued, sitting down across from the girl without waiting for an invitation. She knew it was an odd thing to say, but she couldn't stop herself. There was something about the necklace that felt important. The girl's fingers instinctively reached for the pendant, and she looked down at it for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts before responding. "It was my mom's," she said quietly. The CEO's heart tugged at the words. She had seen many people over the years who wore jewelry for sentimental reasons, but this was different. There was a depth to the way the girl spoke about it, a quiet reverence that suggested the necklace was more than just an object. It was a link to something precious, something irreplaceable. "My mom passed away last year," the girl added, her voice barely above a whisper. The CEO felt a rush of empathy, her own emotions catching her off guard. She had never been a mother, but she had lost people she loved. She understood the ache that came with losing someone important, someone who had always been there. She could only imagine what it must be like for the girl, so young and already carrying such heavy grief. "I'm sorry to hear that," the CEO said softly, her words lacking the usual corporate formality. This was different. She wasn't speaking to an employee or a client. She was speaking to a child who was grieving, someone who needed comfort, not business advice. The girl looked at her for a moment, as if considering whether or not to say more. Then with a sigh, she lowered her gaze to the table, playing with the edge of her napkin. "It's okay. I don't really have anyone to talk to about it," she admitted. I miss her." The CEO felt the weight of those words. She knew what it felt like to miss someone, to have a void in your life that nothing could fill. But she also knew how difficult it could be to talk about that pain, to share it with someone who might not understand. The silence between them grew, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that comes from two people who don't need to fill the space with words to feel understood. The girl looked up again, this time with a hesitant smile. "I didn't mean to make you feel sad," she said, her voice small. "No, you didn't," the CEO replied quickly. her own smile coming easily now. "It's just, sometimes we need to talk about things, even if it's hard." The girl nodded, and for a moment the CEO could see something shift in her expression. A sense of relief, maybe, like she had been holding her breath and had finally exhaled. The CEO paused, unsure of what to say next. She had no answers for the girl, no magic words to take away the pain of loss. But in that moment, she realized that maybe what the girl needed wasn't solutions. Maybe what she needed was just someone to listen. "I know what it's like to feel lonely," the CEO said after a long pause. It was an honest admission, though she had never shared her own feelings of isolation with anyone. Being a CEO had its perks, but it also meant that she rarely had time for real friendships, for connection beyond the surface. She spent her days in meetings, dealing with contracts and numbers, and her nights alone in her apartment, going over more paperwork. It had been years since she had allowed herself to really connect with anyone. "I don't have anyone either," the CEO added, her voice softer now. The girl blinked, clearly surprised by this revelation. "You don't?" The CEO shook her head. "No, I mean, I have people who work with me, but I don't have anyone to talk to the way you talk about your mom. Someone who's just there for me." The girl looked at her, her expression thoughtful. She reached for her necklace again, her fingers tracing the pendant as if it brought her comfort. The CEO glanced down at her watch and realized the time had passed faster than she expected. She still had work to do, but for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the urgency to rush back to her office. She felt connected. She stood up slowly, gathering her things. "I have to go back to work," she said, smiling down at the girl. "But I'm glad we talked. It's not often I get the chance to do that." The girl smiled back, a small but genuine smile. "Thanks for listening," she said quietly. The CEO nodded, her heart a little lighter than it had been before. She wasn't sure what had drawn her to the girl in the first place. Maybe it was the necklace, or maybe it was something more. But as she walked out of the cafe, she felt a strange sense of fulfillment. She had come to the cafe for a coffee, to work, to keep her mind busy. But in that brief encounter, she had found something she hadn't even known she was missing: a connection. The following week, the CEO found herself thinking about the girl in the cafe more often than she expected. It wasn't like her to dwell on encounters, especially with strangers, but something about the conversation had stayed with her. She wasn't sure what had drawn her to Lily. Perhaps it was the way she spoke about her mother or the way the necklace sparkled in the light. But deep down, the CEO knew that it wasn't just about the necklace. It was about something more, something that had been missing in her life for a long time: connection. At first, she tried to push the thoughts away, reminding herself that she had a busy life to manage. But the truth was, her days felt emptier now. After years of focusing on her career, on climbing the corporate ladder, she had left little room for anything else. No time for friendships, no time for family. She had built a life around her work, and it had come at a cost. She had become used to solitude, to the quiet that came with success. But something about Lily's words had awakened something in her. A realization that there was more to life than the spreadsheets and board meetings. The CEO decided that she would go back to the cafe the next day. It wasn't a place she usually visited often, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to see Lily again. She knew it was a strange impulse. She didn't know the girl, didn't know anything about her life. But somehow she felt a pull. The following morning, she found herself sitting in the same corner of the cafe where she had met Lily. She didn't have a specific plan, no expectations. She just hoped that maybe, by some chance, she would run into the girl again. The same calm atmosphere filled the space, and the hum of the espresso machine was a familiar background to the soft chatter of people lost in their own worlds. And then, she saw her. Lily was sitting alone at a table near the window, just as she had been the week before. Her hair was a little neater this time, her dress a bit brighter, as if she had taken the time to care for herself that morning. But the necklace was still there, still hanging from her neck, its gentle shine catching the light. Lily was lost in thought again, looking out the window, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the pendant. The CEO stood up, her heart beating a little faster than she expected. She hadn't planned what she was going to say, but the pull to speak with Lily again was too strong to ignore. She walked over, her steps slow and deliberate. When Lily noticed her, she looked up with a surprised expression, her eyes widening slightly. The CEO smiled, hoping to put her at ease. "Hi, Lily," she said softly. Lily hesitated before returning the smile. "Hi," she replied. "You came back." The CEO nodded, feeling a little nervous but also grateful for the chance to speak with the girl again. "I did. I was hoping we could talk a bit more. Is that okay?" Lily's face softened and she gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Yeah, sure. I don't mind." The CEO sat down, trying to find the right words. It was strange, talking to a girl who was so much younger than her, yet who seemed to understand loss and loneliness in a way that few adults ever did. "I've been thinking about our conversation last week," she began, "and I wanted to ask you, how have you been?" Lily bit her lip for a moment, looking down at the table. "I guess okay," she said, her voice unsure. "It's hard, you know. Some days are better than others." The CEO nodded. She had expected that answer, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. Grief wasn't something you could just move past, not quickly, not easily. She could see the sadness in Lily's eyes, the quiet pain that lingered there even when she tried to push it away. "I know it must be tough," the CEO said gently. "I can't imagine what it's like losing someone so important to you." Lily nodded, her fingers once again finding the pendant of the necklace. "I miss her a lot," she said. "There are times when I forget, like when I'm at school or doing something fun, and then it hits me out of nowhere. I feel like I'm forgetting her, and that makes me feel even worse." The CEO's heart ached for Lily. She knew that feeling of sudden loss all too well, even if it wasn't the same kind of grief. She had lost people in her life, her parents, a close friend, but somehow the grief of losing a mother seemed different, deeper. It wasn't just about missing someone. It was about losing the foundation of everything you knew, the person who had always been there to guide you, to love you unconditionally. "I think it's okay to feel that way," the CEO said slowly. "Grief isn't something you can control. It's not something you can just get over. It comes in waves, and sometimes it's okay to feel sad. But what's important is that you remember the good moments, the love she gave you." Lily looked up at her, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "But how do you do that? How do you remember someone and not feel so sad?" The CEO took a deep breath. She had never really allowed herself to talk about her own feelings of loss. She had buried them beneath her work, believing that the only way forward was through strength and self-sufficiency. But looking at Lily, she realized that maybe she had been wrong. Maybe there was strength in letting herself feel, in letting someone else in. "I don't have all the answers," the CEO said quietly, "but I think the way to keep their memory alive isn't about trying to push the sadness away. It's about carrying them with you, even in the difficult times. They're a part of you now, and nothing can take that away." Lily's expression softened, and for the first time she seemed to relax a little. She smiled, though it was small and uncertain. "I'll try," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The CEO smiled back. "That's all anyone can do." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. The CEO looked at Lily and realized that, despite the pain she had been carrying, the girl was incredibly strong. She had lost someone she loved deeply, yet she still found a way to keep going. It was something the CEO admired, something she had forgotten how to do in her own life. Somewhere along the way, she had become so focused on success and work that she had forgotten what it was like to truly connect with others, to allow herself to be vulnerable. After a long pause, the CEO spoke again. "You know, I've been thinking," she began, unsure of how to continue. Lily raised an eyebrow, looking at her curiously. "I know I'm not your mom," the CEO said, her voice gentle but firm. "But if you ever want someone to talk to, or if you just need company, I'm here." Lily's eyes widened for a moment, surprise and gratitude shining through. "You mean it?" she asked. The CEO nodded. "Of course. I know we don't know each other well, but you don't have to go through this alone." Lily smiled again, this time a little brighter. "Thanks," she whispered. The CEO smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that she was doing something important, something that mattered. In a world that often felt cold and disconnected, these moments of connection, however brief, were worth more than anything else. They spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing at all, about school, about life, about things that made them both laugh. It was a simple conversation, but to both of them it felt like so much more. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times there was still light to be found, still hope to hold on to. As they parted ways, the CEO couldn't help but feel that something had changed in her. It wasn't just about the girl or the conversation. It was about the realization that sometimes the greatest gifts we can give each other are the smallest moments of kindness. The days that followed were a blur for the CEO. Her schedule was packed with meetings, calls, and constant demands from her growing company. Yet despite the chaos that often surrounded her, she found herself returning to the cafe every few days. It wasn't for the coffee or the quiet, although she appreciated both. It was for the girl she had met there, Lily. There was something about their connection, however brief, that had stirred something deep within her. The CEO had spent so much of her life focused on work that she had forgotten the importance of relationships, the kind that weren't transactional, the ones that didn't involve negotiating deals or signing contracts, the kind that were simply about being there for someone, offering them a piece of yourself without expecting anything in return. Each time she saw Lily, it felt like a new chapter unfolding. She didn't know exactly where their bond was headed, but she knew that in some small way, it was filling a part of her life she hadn't realized was empty. A few days after their last meeting, the CEO arrived at the cafe feeling the familiar mix of anticipation and curiosity. She didn't know if Lily would be there, but part of her hoped that she would be. The CEO knew she had no right to expect anything from the girl. After all, they barely knew each other. But there was an undeniable pull, something beyond mere kindness that had begun to form between them. As she entered the cafe, she immediately spotted Lily sitting by the window, just as she had before. The girl looked up and noticed her immediately, and for the briefest moment their eyes met. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that this wasn't just a chance encounter, it was something more. The CEO smiled and walked over to her, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mind if I join you again?" she asked, her voice light but warm. Lily didn't hesitate. "Of course," she said, her face brightening. "I'm glad you came." The CEO sat down across from her, noticing that Lily seemed a bit more at ease than the last time they had spoken. Her posture was more relaxed, and the sadness that had lingered in her eyes seemed to have softened. Just a little. "How have you been?" the CEO asked, genuinely curious. It had only been a few days, but she couldn't help but wonder if the girl had found any peace since their last conversation. Lily looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. "Better, I think. It's still hard, but I've been talking to my aunt more. She's been helping me a lot, even if she doesn't know what to say most of the time." The CEO nodded, appreciating Lily's honesty. It was a relief to hear that the girl had someone else in her life who was trying to support her. Still, the CEO could sense that the weight of the loss wasn't something that could be so easily fixed. "It would take time." "That's good," the CEO said, offering a comforting smile. "It helps to have people around even if they don't always have the right words." Lily gave a small appreciative smile. "Yeah, it does. But sometimes I just wish she could understand what I'm feeling. I miss my mom so much." "I know," the CEO said quietly, her voice soft but full of empathy. "I can't imagine how hard it must be. But I think it's okay to miss her. It means she was really special to you, and that's a beautiful thing." Lily's eyes brightened a little at the CEO's words, and she nodded. "Yeah, I guess you're right. I do miss her. But I don't know how to keep going without her." The CEO paused, considering her response carefully. She wasn't an expert on grief, far from it. But she had learned a few things along the way. "You don't have to have it all figured out," she said gently. "Sometimes the best thing we can do is just keep going, even when we don't know what's next." Lily's gaze shifted down to the table, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The CEO leaned in slightly, her expression serious. "I think you're stronger than you know," she said. "You've already gone through something really difficult and you're still here. That takes a lot of courage." Lily looked up at her, her expression softening. "Thanks, I don't really feel strong, but I'm trying." The CEO smiled warmly, feeling a genuine sense of pride in the girl. She had only known Lily for a short time, but she could already see how resilient she was. The CEO had always admired strength, but there was something about the quiet strength that Lily displayed that resonated deeply with her. As the conversation continued, The CEO found herself talking more openly than she had in years. She shared little snippets of her own life with Lily, stories of growing up, of the challenges she had faced on her way to the top, of the loneliness that sometimes came with being in charge of everything. She had never spoken so candidly about herself, especially not with someone so much younger. But something about Lily's openness made the CEO feel comfortable. In a way, it was as though they were both healing together. Lily listened intently, her eyes focused on the CEO as she spoke. "You've been through a lot too, haven't you?" she said softly. The CEO nodded. "Yes, I've lost people too. But sometimes I think the hardest part is realizing that life doesn't stop just because someone is gone. You have to keep going even when it feels impossible." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing the words. "Do you ever feel like you're just pretending to be okay?" she asked quietly. The CEO's heart ached at the question, and for a brief moment she was taken aback by how much it resonated with her. It was a question she had asked herself many times. "Yes," she said after a pause. "I think we all do at times. But pretending doesn't mean you're not feeling what you're feeling. It just means you're doing the best you can." Lily nodded slowly, her fingers absently playing with the necklace around her neck. "I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to keep going," she said softly. "I don't want to forget my mom, but it hurts too much sometimes." The CEO understood. "It's okay to feel hurt. That's part of loving someone. You don't have to forget her. You just have to find a way to carry her memory with you even when it hurts." Lily's expression softened and she looked down at the necklace again. "I don't want to forget her. I think I just need to figure out how to feel better." "I think that's the hardest part," the CEO said, offering a gentle smile. "But you don't have to do it alone." For the rest of their time together, the conversation flowed easily between them, as if they had known each other for much longer than they really had. It was the kind of conversation that made time feel irrelevant, where everything else faded into the background. When it was time for the CEO to leave, she felt a sense of warmth in her chest. She had come to the cafe for coffee and a quick chat, but what she had found was something far more meaningful: a connection. As she stood up to leave, Lily smiled at her. "I'm glad you came back," she said, her voice soft but sincere. The CEO smiled back, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad too," she replied. "I'll see you soon, okay?" Lily nodded. "Yeah, see you soon." And with that, the CEO left the cafe, her heart a little lighter than when she had entered. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure: she was no longer alone. The following weeks brought a surprising shift in both the CEO's and Lily's lives. What had begun as a simple chance encounter had slowly morphed into a meaningful connection, one that neither of them could have predicted. The CEO, who had once been consumed by the demands of her company and the ever-present pressure to succeed, now found herself looking forward to her meetings with Lily. The girl's quiet resilience and open heart had started to break down the walls the CEO had built around herself over the years. Lily, for her part, seemed to grow stronger with each conversation. It was clear that she had days when the grief overwhelmed her, but she was learning to navigate those emotions in ways that were surprising for someone so young. The CEO had noticed how much Lily had begun to smile more often, how she seemed to be finding comfort in small things again, like the scent of flowers or the sound of birds in the morning. It had been a few weeks since their last conversation at the cafe, but the CEO found herself back there again, just like she had so many times before. This time, however, she wasn't sure if Lily would be there. Her schedule had been incredibly hectic lately, and she hadn't had the chance to check in with the girl as often as she would have liked. Still, she hoped. As she entered the cafe, she scanned the room. It was busy today, a mixture of people huddled over laptops, having quiet conversations and sipping coffee. Then she spotted her, a familiar face across the room. Lily sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, her gaze directed toward the street outside. She hadn't noticed the CEO yet, so the CEO took a moment to watch her. There was a calmness about Lily now, a quiet strength that hadn't been there the first time they met. The CEO took a deep breath and made her way over to the table. When Lily noticed her, her face lit up in recognition. "Hey," she said with a smile, her voice warm. "Hey there," the CEO replied, feeling a rush of relief. "How's it going today?" Lily shrugged slightly but didn't seem as weighed down as she had been in the past. "Better. I think I'm starting to understand things a little more now. The CEO sat down across from her, relieved to see her in a better place. What's been helping? She asked, genuinely curious. She had seen the girl struggle, but this felt different. There was something brighter in her eyes today, a softness to her smile. Lily took a sip of her tea, her fingers wrapped around the mug. I don't know. I've been trying to focus on the things that make me happy. Like, I've been taking walks in the park, reading books I love, and spending more time with my aunt. That sounds like a good way to handle it, the CEO said, nodding approvingly. Sometimes the little things really help, don't they? Like the things that make you feel safe, even if just for a moment. Lily smiled, clearly appreciating the understanding. Yeah, exactly. And I've been thinking about my mom more too. Not just about how much I miss her, but about all the good times we had. I think I'm starting to remember her differently. It's still hard, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming. That's a big step, the CEO said softly. It's hard to move past grief, especially when you're so young. But it's good that you're able to hold on to those memories and let them bring you comfort instead of just pain. Lily nodded, looking down at her tea for a moment. I think it's the hardest when I think about all the things I didn't get to say or do with her. Like, she didn't get to see me graduate or get my first job. Or even meet the people who are important to me now. I don't know why, but that really hurts. The CEO's heart ached at Lily's words. I think that's something a lot of people feel when they lose someone they love. You start to imagine all the things they would have been a part of, and it feels like there's this big hole in your life because they're not there. But they're still with you. Not in the way you might have hoped, but in the way that their memory, their love continues to shape you. Lily looked up at her, as though she was hearing those words for the first time. You really think so? She asked, her voice tentative. I do, the CEO replied firmly. And I think that's why I've come to the cafe so much lately. To spend time with you, to remind myself that the people we care about don't really leave us. They become a part of us in the way we remember them, in the way we carry them forward. Lily seemed to reflect on that for a while, her gaze softening as she thought about her mom. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I can believe that. The CEO smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. I'm glad. There was a long pause between them, a comfortable silence that wasn't awkward. The kind of silence that comes from two people who simply understand each other without needing to fill the space with words. Finally, Lily spoke again, her voice quiet but sure. I've been thinking a lot about what you said that day, about pretending to be okay. I think I've been pretending for a while. Like I'm fine, when I'm really not. But it's hard to stop pretending, I don't want to disappoint anyone. The CEO's heart swelled with understanding. I know it's hard. Pretending feels safer sometimes, but it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to carry the weight of everything by yourself. You have people who care about you, including your aunt and even me. Lily smiled shyly at her. Thanks, she whispered. I don't know if I've ever really felt like I could talk to anyone before. I'm glad you feel like you can talk to me, the CEO said, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. It's important. Sometimes just talking about things is the best way to begin moving forward. They sat in quiet companionship for a while longer, each of them lost in their own thoughts. There was something healing about these conversations. It wasn't about offering solutions or fixing things. It was simply about being there, listening, and allowing each other to feel what they were feeling without judgment. Eventually, the CEO stood up to leave, feeling the weight of the conversation settling in. But before she walked away, she turned to Lily, her smile soft. I'm proud of you, you know that? Lily's eyes widened in surprise. Why? Because you're doing the hard work, the CEO said, her voice sincere. You're facing your grief head on. You're finding ways to heal. It's not easy and it doesn't happen all at once, but you're doing it. And that takes strength. Lily's face flushed a little, but there was a new spark in her eyes. Thanks, I think I can do this. I'm going to keep trying, the CEO nodded. And I'll be here if you ever need someone to talk to. As the CEO left the cafe, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment that she hadn't felt in years. Her life had become so focused on business, on success, on achievements. But meeting Lily had reminded her of the importance of human connection, the kind that didn't come with expectations or deadlines, the kind that simply required being there for each other. The road ahead was still uncertain for both of them. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, The CEO felt that she wasn't alone in the world, and neither was Lily. The weeks continued to pass by, each one a blur of meetings, emails, and tasks for the CEO, yet something had fundamentally changed in her life. Her connection with Lily, the young girl she had met months ago in the cafe, had transformed her in ways she hadn't expected. Every time she saw Lily, she was reminded of the importance of human connection, of the simple act of being there for someone, of offering support without judgment. And every time Lily smiled, every time they shared a moment of understanding, the CEO felt that little by little, she was rediscovering the parts of herself that had been lost. For Lily, the changes had been even more profound. The grief that had once consumed her, that had threatened to define her life, no longer held the same power over her. It was still there, of course. Grief didn't disappear overnight, and it wasn't something anyone could escape from. But Lily had found ways to carry it with her without letting it control her. She had started opening up more to her aunt, and their bond had grown stronger. She had begun finding joy in small things again, in the warmth of the sun on her face, in the laughter of her friends, in the simple act of sitting quietly with a book. The CEO, too, had started allowing herself to feel things she had long kept buried. She had begun to take time for herself outside of work, to appreciate the people in her life. People like Lily, who had come into her world unexpectedly but had ended up teaching her so much. She had never been one to ask for help or lean on others, but now she found herself doing just that, little by little. And though she had always seen herself as a strong, independent woman, she had begun to understand that true strength came not from doing everything on her own, but from being vulnerable and letting others in. One crisp autumn afternoon, the CEO found herself back in the cafe just as she had so many times before. But today was different. She had no specific plans. She didn't have a meeting to attend or a report to review. She was simply there, hoping to spend a little more time with Lily, who had become an unexpected but vital part of her life. As she stepped inside, the familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee greeted her, and she took a moment to savor the comforting scent. It had become a second home of sorts for her over the past few months, a place where she could slow down, reflect, and connect with someone who wasn't part of her professional world. It was a small, quiet space, the kind of place where people came to take a breath before diving back into their hectic lives. She scanned the room and saw Lily sitting near the window, her head bent over a book. The CEO smiled, feeling a wave of affection wash over her. It was hard to explain exactly what it was that drew her to this girl, but there was something so pure, so unguarded about Lily that made her want to be there for her, in whatever way she could. "Hey," the CEO said softly as she approached. Lily looked up, her face lighting up in recognition. "Hi," she said, closing her book and setting it aside. "I didn't expect you today." The CEO grinned as she sat down across from her. "I know, I didn't plan it either. I just felt like being here." "That's kind of nice," Lily said, smiling. "Sometimes it's good to just do things without thinking too much." The CEO chuckled. "You're right. I'm usually thinking about a million things at once, but today I decided to take a break from all that." Lily raised an eyebrow. "Is that even possible for you? I thought CEOs were always busy." "I'm sure we all like to think we're too busy for anything else," the CEO replied. "But sometimes it's good to slow down and remind ourselves that there's more to life than work." Lily nodded, as if she understood exactly what the CEO meant. For a moment, the two of them sat in comfortable silence, the soft background noise of the cafe filling the space between them. There was something reassuring about the quiet. The CEO realized how much she had come to treasure these moments with Lily, how much they had come to mean to her. "I've been thinking a lot lately," the CEO said after a while, "about how things have changed in my life since we met." Lily looked at her with curiosity. "How have they changed?" The CEO thought for a moment before responding. "Well, I guess I've realized that I've spent so much of my life focused on work. I used to think that success and achievement were the most important things. But now I see how much I've been missing. There's more to life than just meetings and deadlines." Lily smiled softly. "I think I know what you mean. It's easy to get caught up in everything, but sometimes it's the little things that matter more." "I've learned that from you," the CEO said, her voice softening. "You've shown me that even in the middle of pain and loss, there's still room for growth. You've taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finding ways to live with the things that hurt us without letting them control us. Lily's eyes widened a little, and she looked down at her hands, clearly moved by the CEO's words. "I didn't realize I was teaching you anything," she said quietly. The CEO smiled gently. "You have, though, in ways you probably don't even realize. Your strength, your ability to keep going even when things feel impossible. It's inspired me." Lily blushed slightly, clearly touched by the compliment. "Thanks, I think you've helped me too. You've shown me that it's okay to not always have everything figured out, that it's okay to feel sad sometimes and not hide it. I think we both have a lot to learn from each other," the CEO said with a soft laugh. "Life isn't always easy, but maybe the most important thing is that we don't face it alone, that we find people who can be there for us, who can remind us that it's okay to feel." Lily nodded, her smile becoming more confident. "Yeah, and I think we're learning that one day at a time." They sat in silence again, this time with a sense of peace between them. The CEO couldn't help but marvel at how far Lily had come in such a short time. When they first met, the girl had been overwhelmed by grief, struggling to find her way through the pain. But now Lily was stronger. She had found a way to live with the loss, to honor her mother's memory without letting it define her. The CEO knew that Lily still had a long journey ahead of her, and that there would be days when the grief would return with a vengeance. But she also knew that the girl wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. After a while, the CEO stood up, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a long time. "I have to get going," she said, though she hated the thought of leaving the cafe. "But I'm really glad we got to talk today." Lily stood up as well, a warm smile on her face. "Me too, it's always good to see you." The CEO placed a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "You're doing great, you know that?" Lily smiled, a quiet but confident smile. "Thanks. I think I'm starting to believe that." As the CEO walked out of the cafe, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't have all the answers, and life wasn't perfect. But she had found something meaningful in the midst of the chaos, a connection with someone who had taught her as much as she had taught them. And for the first time in a long time, the CEO felt hopeful. In the end, it wasn't the success or the achievements that mattered. It was the people we meet, the moments we share, and the ways we choose to show up for one another. And in Lily, the CEO had found someone who had reminded her of all that, and more. The weeks turned into months, and the bond between the CEO and Lily only seemed to grow stronger. Each time they met, their conversations went deeper, the silences between them more comfortable. They had come a long way since their first encounter, and each meeting brought with it a new layer of understanding, not just between them, but within themselves. Lily, for her part, had started to find her own way. The pain of losing her mother hadn't disappeared, of course, it never really did, but she had found a way to carry it with grace. She still had moments when the grief would wash over her like a wave, but she had learned to ride those waves rather than be overwhelmed by them. She had begun to smile more, to laugh more, to live more. The CEO, too, had changed in ways she hadn't expected. She had spent so many years focused solely on her work, believing that success was the only thing that defined her. But now, as she spent more time with Lily, she began to realize that there was more to life than what could be measured by achievements or financial milestones. She had started to reconnect with the parts of herself she had long neglected. Her compassion, her vulnerability, her capacity for connection. One late afternoon, the CEO found herself in the cafe once again. It had become a sort of ritual for her, a place where she could escape the pressures of the world and just be. Today, however, there was something different in the air. She had a sense that things were about to change once more. When she walked inside, she immediately spotted Lily sitting by the window as usual. But there was something different about the way she looked today. She was smiling, but it wasn't the shy, uncertain smile she used to give. This was something deeper, something more confident. The CEO approached her with a smile. "Hey there," she said as she sat down. Lily looked up, her eyes sparkling. "Hey, it's so good to see you today." The CEO settled into her seat, noting the new energy in Lily's demeanor. "You look different," she said with a raised eyebrow. "In a good way." Lily laughed, her eyes lighting up even more. "I feel different," she admitted. "I've been working on myself, you know. It's still a journey, but I feel like I'm getting there." "I'm proud of you," the CEO said sincerely. "I can see it. You've come so far." Lily's smile grew wider. "Thanks. Honestly, it feels like I'm finally starting to heal. I've been going to therapy, talking to my aunt more, and doing things that make me happy. It's not perfect, but it's progress. The CEO nodded. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a process, and you've been doing the hard work. I've learned a lot from you, actually, Lily said, her voice soft. The way you handle things, it's like you've taught me that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to not have all the answers. The CEO felt a warmth spread through her chest. She wasn't used to hearing compliments like that, especially from someone so young. Well, you've taught me something too, she said quietly. You've shown me that it's okay to care about people outside of work, that it's okay to slow down and really listen, to be there for someone when they need you. Lily paused for a moment, clearly reflecting on the CEO's words. You've been there for me, she said softly, in ways I never expected. I didn't think I'd find someone who would understand. But you do. The CEO's heart swelled with emotion. It wasn't just that Lily had become a friend. It was that they had come to mean something more to each other, something deeper than they had expected. In each other they had found solace, understanding, and even a sense of purpose. I think we've both needed someone, the CEO said, her voice thick with emotion, someone who understands what we're going through even if it's not the same thing. Lily nodded, her expression serious but peaceful. Yeah, I've realized that sometimes just knowing that someone is there for you makes all the difference. They sat in silence for a while, letting the words settle between them. The world outside the cafe seemed to slow down, the noise of the city muted by the peaceful understanding between them. The CEO thought back to the first time they met. She had never imagined that a chance encounter with a young girl could lead to this deep, meaningful connection. I've been thinking about something lately, Lily said, breaking the silence. I want to do something to honor my mom, something that helps other people, something that makes her proud. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel like I need to do something. The CEO looked at her, intrigued. What kind of thing? Lily shrugged, a bit unsure. I don't know. Maybe I'll start volunteering. Or maybe I'll do something creative like write a book or make a film about her. Something that keeps her memory alive, but in a way that helps others. The CEO smiled, a genuine proud smile. Whatever you choose, I know it will be meaningful. And I know it will help you heal too. Giving back is a powerful way to honor someone. Lily looked thoughtful. Yeah, it feels like the right way to go. The CEO could see the fire in Lily's eyes, the same determination that had been present when they first met. But now it was focused, sharper. She could feel it too, the shift in both of them. They had come a long way from that first conversation, and the journey was still unfolding. You've come so far, the CEO said softly, and I'm excited to see where you go from here. Lily's smile widened and she reached across the table, her hand resting on top of the CEO's. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Thank you for being here for me, she said quietly. You've given me more than you know. The CEO's eyes softened, her heart full. It's been an honor, Lily, and I'm glad we found each other. The rest of the afternoon passed in peaceful conversation. They talked about small things, books, music, memories, but also about the bigger picture, about dreams, about the future, and about the things they both still wanted to do in their lives. It was a conversation that felt like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. As they parted ways, the CEO felt a profound sense of peace. The person she had been before meeting Lily seemed so distant now, like a version of herself she didn't recognize. The woman sitting across from Lily today was different. She was kinder, more open, more willing to connect. Lily, too, had changed. The pain that had once threatened to consume her had been transformed into something else, something that didn't define her, but that she carried with her as she moved forward. She wasn't perfect, and neither was the CEO, but together, they had created something beautiful, something meaningful. The CEO walked out of the cafe, a little lighter than she had been when she walked in. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. The journey she had shared with Lily had changed her. And that change had been nothing short of life-changing. And so, as she walked into the unknown, she carried with her the lessons she had learned, the love she had discovered, and the quiet understanding that no matter where life took her, she was no longer alone.